where that moment in history is, where there is a decision. Because I think we're entering into a period where leaders will have to make important decisions that they will then have to live with the consequences of, and so will other people. And this is going to be my eighth recession, yours too. So the reality is, people behave very badly when they operate out of fear and scarcity. I believe that sales is a real force for good, and it offers the potential to gain some level of agency. I think we convince ourselves we have more control than we do. Maybe 30% of what we believe we have control over, we actually have control over. But that bit, we do actually have some agency over, and it can give us some control. It can give us some purpose. And sales, I believe, is an opportunity for people to learn to lead. The seller code is really a code of leadership. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to attract, engage, enroll, and enlist future leaders, prepare them for the difficult times ahead so they make good decisions well in the moment. And that's why I'm delighted to bring Simon in today. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that one of the concepts I explore a lot, and I certainly explore it in the realm of selling, and then we should preface this and get folks into the discussion. But I'm even questioning whether leadership is enough and whether we should be talking about stewardship. And stewardship is this simple concept of take what was gifted to you and return it with increase. Ultimately, you give it back. And great stewards, there's an interesting oddity about human behavior, Marcus. And that oddity is simply this. Let me find Zoom again. There it is. Humans only care, and this is a model I've drawn often, so you're quite familiar with it. But February 2024, humans only care about the future if it has them in it. I just want to repeat that for a second. The only time humans care about the future is if it has them in it. The planet's had 5 major extinction events over billions of years, and it's healed itself every time. It overheated, everything died. There's no carbon in certain strata of Earth because there was no plant or animal life on it. Then it had a big freeze and everything died. It's had a meteorite hit it and it had a massive extinction event, but the planet healed itself every time. So when we talk about the future, we're often talking about whether we're on a red line heading down where humans are unhappy, or a green line heading up where humans are happy. And let's just talk about the environment for a moment. If somebody said by 2100 humans will be extinct, would anyone actually care about the environment? If we said we've got 76 years left and then we're gone, I don't think environment would even be a conversation, because humans only care about the future when we're in it. Stewardship is this process of saying, if I'm sitting here right now, or here, it's my job to try and behave on the green line in a way, if each one of these is a generation, in a way that presents a future generation that I will never meet, a future generation that I will never meet, with a better view, a better circumstance, a better situation around this thing that I've got some carriage and agency for. In my world, that's how companies show up and sell. So how can I play a bigger role in the role that companies should play in the marketplace? So this simple idea of stewardship challenges us on how we make everything a force for good. How do we make selling a powerful force for good? How do we make companies a powerful force for good? How do we clean up the negative press about all things sales and selling? And then in the context of today's discussion, I don't know if we want to do an introduction, but I'd love people to come away with some deeper thoughts about not just a broad conversation, but something practical that we can do. So it's probably good, Marcus, just you and I have had a chat. Maybe intro prior to this, but maybe intro people into this and get into a deeper conversation.
Okay, well, let's start with the seller code. The seller code is a concept that Pat Lahat, myself, and several others have contributed to. And really, it's a view of the world which basically looks at it through the lens of the customer and says, you know, if we were a buyer, we'd rather like it if we were treated with a certain amount of respect. So let's just show the seller code so that we can see it. And as you read through it, is there anything in there that resonates with you? If you put yourself in the buyer's shoes, do you want the seller to focus on you and your issues and the outcome that you want? Do you want them to be trustworthy? Do you want them to pay attention? Do you actually want them to understand your situation so that when they do eventually propose a solution, it's fit for purpose? And ultimately, all buyers want to eliminate their risk. The brain's default setting to uncertainty is the worst case scenario. If you do anything as a seller that smacks of a threat, their limbic system will kick in and will start to get jittery. If you do enough of that and go over their risk threshold, then they will turn into Chicken Little. And we only have to look at the research from the Jolt effect. 32% of all sales pipeline is lost because the salesperson missed the moment. And what they did was they tried to ratchet up the pain or feature and function and a better future the buyer to death, when what they needed was a damn good listening to, real empathy, someone actually feeling what they felt, hearing what they heard, and seeing what they see as they see it. So our job as sellers primarily is to eliminate us as a threat. And this is why I really wanted to bring Simon in today, because if you don't understand the beliefs that underpin your purpose, the reason why you are doing what you are doing, and the outcomes that that gives and or creates the conditions to facilitate for your customer, and you don't tie that directly to behaviors that support those outcomes and those values and beliefs, then odds are whatever you're peddling will fall on deaf ears. And Simon is a master of taking really complex ideas and simplifying them and putting the customer at the heart of everything that we do. So is that a reasonable intro?
Yeah, let me ask a question. Who is the best salesperson on the planet right now?
Probably going to be a child.
People can type it into the chat if they want.
I would go, if it's a child, I would say Trump.
Patrick, Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Taylor Swift is the best salesperson on the planet right in this moment. She launched a tour that's going to generate about $3 billion. The whole thing swings off her and her songs. She launched the tour at one of the last concerts of her previous tour. She's sitting at a piano and she's looking at the audience. She said, someone asked me why I don't do a concert where I sing all my songs. And I said, and that would take about 3.5 hours. And then I got thinking, why don't I do that tour where I do a 3.5 hour concert, 2 shows in one, and we're going to do it, and it's going to be called the Era Tour, the Eras Tour. And she has traveled that thing around the world. I don't know if you live in a city where she's been, but my middle daughter has just flown from Perth to Sydney with all the cost attached, and made clothes and friendship bracelets. She's 32, right? Clothes and friendship bracelets and everything else. They are invested. Now,
Community.
Is Taylor Swift the best musician around? Hell no. Is she the best songwriter? She's a good songwriter, but she doesn't write classics. You know, we're not going to be listening to her songs in 100 years' time like people will be to the Beatles songs. Is she the best dancer on stage? No. There are memes about how awkward she is when she's dancing. What is it about Taylor Swift? She understands her audience, and they know that she cares about them. Now, for anyone that's not a Taylor Swift fan, they think she's a bit fake. For everyone that is a Taylor Swift fan, they think that she cares intimately about them. And she is yeah, Elon Musk might be about to implode, actually. But she is, you know, she invests in cities. People feel like she gets them. You know, she's completely relatable. And so there's some interesting things that go on. I want to position a couple of kind of concepts and then come to a really simple kind of expression of this based on how we've all been taught to sell, but flipping it over. If we think about the 5 buying decisions that everybody goes through, and this is a model that I teach fairly often, if the prospect comes in on this side, what they're trying to do is narrow down amongst all the people that can solve their problem, one person, one company to buy from to solve their problem. So that, you know, when they've got a need or a problem, they're going to buy from one person. So what's the first buying decision? Do I like, trust, respect, and believe you? Now that's specifically the person. So if you have salespeople, that applies to the salespeople. If it's you, it applies to you. Do I like, trust, respect, and believe you? How many of you would go ahead with a purchase if the person in front of you didn't pass muster on those 4 things? Now, they don't have to respect you. That's probably the one that they don't have to have. But for them to move forward, there's got to be some level of believability. And then it gets into, do I like, trust, respect, and believe your company? So you're a great person, but will your company stand behind this? And then if that passes muster, is there a fit? Will your product solve my problem or your service? And then is it value for money? Not lowest price, but value for money, ROI. And then the one thing we can't control that well is time, their priority. When should they do it? When we get objections about priority, it usually relates to this. When we get objections about price, it either relates to this or they just can't afford you. When we get objections about product, I'm not sure that will solve my problem. It relates to this. But there's this kind of objection we get, which is an objection of indifference. You know what? I'll just get back to you. I want to talk to my management team. They haven't connected with you in some way. And I would argue that we have to get through these levels in the marketplace today to really make deep, powerful sales that don't actually get us a client, but immediately win us, you know, a super fan, an advocate, someone who's going to defend us to the hilt. So where do most people position? Most sales teams and things that we come into contact with are positioning straight into fit or price. And they go, oh, you know, people are pushing back. That's because they haven't built the first 2 levels. Features and benefit selling is straight into product fit, product specification. And there's a flip of paradigm I'd like to put in front of everybody as a thought process to go through. But before I do that, I'm happy to kind of, you know, facilitate the conversation just around this particular model for the first instance. To you know, there's a lot of smart people here, and to see, you know, what sort of comments and observations come up out of this, because it's a major issue to me that we blow through those first 2 levels without really actually laying down the foundation. And my experience is, yes.
Just to reiterate your point, Charlie Green in the session we did a couple of weeks back made the point that Everyone leads with credibility in the trust equation. It is the least important factor by a country mile. The most important factor is intimacy, followed by low self-orientation. And credibility and reliability are little more than table stakes in most of the decision making.
So what is intimacy? What will get you through that? Actually, I'll put a green arrow. What will carry you through those two levels is intimacy. What will push you backwards is impatience.
And selfishness.
Yeah, like, so what happens with impatience? Everybody wants to sell in the seller's time, not in the buyer's time.
And this is really important to understand. We are moving into an economy, an economic state where people are operating from fear and scarcity. That doesn't generally bode well for the customer. Right. It tends to create management that is punitive, controlling, micromanaging. They focus on managing the numbers. And if you operate, Simon taught me a wonderful model called the Iron Triangle. There's a model that I've developed, which is down one side you have revenue, underneath you have strategy, and on the other side you have relationship. And you ask, where are you focusing your attention? And inevitably it's on revenue. Is that on the inputs or the outcomes? Okay, well, they tell you the inputs. And so what do you measure? Oh, the outcomes. So you know that the emphasis is always on the wrong end of the problem. In the same way as in Simon's model here, everything is about trying to sell to the vendor's time to try and meet your selfish objectives. So any mention, Pat will chime in on this, any mention of talking about price, your price, is essentially selfish. Talking about your features and functions is selfish. Trying to do a BANT type questioning process is selfish. None of those things serve the customer, and there's some simple rules. Is your question timely, relevant, and valuable? Does it help the customer understand with clarity the reality of their situation? Does it help them understand what options are within their grasp? And does it move them towards making a good decision well? If you fail on any of those counts, you have no business asking that question or letting those words come out of your mouth. Is that fair?
Yeah, very fair. I'm interested if there's any sometimes expertise gets in the middle of the natural.
Yeah, I'm going to shut up. Lahat.
In the comments, that's I mean, it's absolutely true. So, you know, people selling technical complex products or services often sell into their own field of expertise. There's an interesting, I want to flip something on its head for a moment. If you sell to products and services, they're usually down at the action level. And these are, so here's the problem. And here's the solution. So this is absolutely transactional. Product specification, which is fine. Where does that come from? It comes from knowledge. We've been able to put this product together. I'm going to ask a big question in a minute. So with the perspectives that we have, we've been able to put a product or service together with the experience that we have that will solve that problem. All you're left with at that level is testimonials and social proof and things like that. What actually drives that knowledge? There's an interesting line of thought. It's deep insight. And deep insight is an intimate understanding of what is going on in the present moment for the customer. That comes from hindsight, which is the past, and it actually comes also from foresight, which is the future. Foresight allows us to say, here's what you need. Hindsight allows us to say, this is what we learned from the past. And so we know what to do right now. We have a knowing based on time and history, evidence. Then there's a level above that, above that insight, which is wisdom. And wisdom is this process of being completely centered. People just feel safer with you. You know why certain things need to happen. If this is transactional, this is transformational, and this is timeless. So if company A said, we can solve this problem, and here's our knowledge and our product and service that delivers action, and it's going to cost X amount of dollars. And company B positions into the marketplace and says, this is who we are. And everything we do down here, no matter what problems we're solving, is coming from this deep level of intimate understanding of what is going on, and it's going to cost this much. If you're given those two companies to deal with, which one are you going to choose, company A or company B? Right? Now, I guarantee company B isn't marketing with a click funnel and a product spec and things like that. They're actually showing up and having conversations and demonstrating Taylor Swift-like intimacy with the marketplace. The reason Taylor Swift is the best salesperson on the planet right now is because somehow these people feel like she has a level of connection and awareness and insight and understanding. She's only 32, if that, but this kind of just connection to her audience. And we've been codifying what we call genius. We call this top part genius. And for quite some time now, we've been codifying genius and showing people how to display their genius to the marketplace rather than their product specification. In fact, the one comment I've been making all the time is your products and services cannot differentiate you in the marketplace, because almost every product and service specification looks the same as others. It's your genius, the stuff above that line, that differentiates you in the marketplace. So, and I don't have a sense of timeline, Marcus, by the way.
We're half an hour in, we've got another hour.
Sure. So, one, in my market, most of my ICPs are used to act transactionally. Now, their above levels get it from a strategy. Can you just explain that a bit more? The comment in the chat.
Yes, sorry. In my market, my ICP is the marketing operations practitioner, maybe the director or someone that manage the marketing operations tools or platforms in companies. And they are like really dense and worldwide group, fascinated by tools and transactional things, and what you call vanity metrics, downloads, leads, MQLs, these kind of things that are not clearly related with the business, because the business doesn't have a clear view of the value or the contribution that really contributes to the business. So when I say there's a power struggle is, for example, the CFO. They say, we are going to get rid of this cost of marketing operations, and they cut budget and they get rid of people, and then they lose the potential impact positive from their operations work. But it's like they can't defend themselves because they are in this I don't know how you say, monogamic or a self-centered activity and events and books and everything you read or you talk or you speak with them is around tools and efficiency, not effectiveness. So it's like that. So my question is how to motivate them to think differently or to align with the business point of view to help them, and not to be seen as the one that will cut their heads with the CFO. That's my struggle right now.
The challenge with great selling that is driven by buyer safety and this kind of insight that I'm talking about is needing to push people back up through the hierarchy in the flow of conversation. So, you know, the worst time to try and shift people to a higher level view is at that point in the process where, you know, can you give us your proposal? You know, by the time you get to proposal stage, by the time you get to that conversation, you know, once you're in here, you're at transactional level. Once you're inside this, does this solution fit my problem? What's the pricing on this and return on investment? And, you know, what's the right time for us to do this?
Yes.
Unfortunately, if we jump straight into there in the sales sequence, we're jumping straight into transactional selling. And, you know, I think more than ever today, I don't know if people agree on the call or not, but I'm sort of interested in what people do think. I think if we're really going to sell at a higher level and at a almost a higher level of integrity, we have to become much more provocative in the sales conversations. We've got to be willing to call thinking out and all of that sort of thing. I'd love to have a conversation across the people on the call rather than that just being, oh, you know, we'll present a whole pile of stuff. I'd love to have a bit of a chat just briefly for a second about, and even some of the things that people might have done. We use models to be provocative, to shift thinking, but I'd love to kind of have a chat across the call, Marcus, actually, just for a few minutes about, you know, this idea of being provocative in the sales process, because a lot of people don't feel like it's particularly safe to be provocative. But if you're not provocative, you're going to sell on price. Is that a fair comment for me to make?
I think absolutely. And it's your responsibility to help them move their thinking. All any of us sell is change. It's moving from where they are to where they could be. If we don't create the conditions to make that change safe, then they're not going to make that change. And it's our responsibility to serve their outcome. If we do what you're suggesting and you go through that process of really understanding the why behind it and making it clear, that is the reason why you exist, and serving that purpose, it's completely different in a world bereft of trust and authenticity, and it's only going to get worse. In the last 7 recessions, I have seen people lie, omit, exaggerate, bully, coerce, pressurize, and basically perform fraud. That is going to be more frequent, and buyers will not feel safe. In order to differentiate, don't do any of that. I mean, just be a decent human being. That's what the seller code is. It's just a guide to being a decent human being at a time when everyone else is behaving like crap.
Well, I'd love to, I want to share something else. This might be a useful way of framing things for people to think about. If we talk about results over time, if we talk about results over time, most people want to stay in the status quo. So people don't really want to shift that much. It's interesting. People go out to buy a product or a service of any size, any complexity, and they don't actually want to change that much. I don't know if anyone on the call's ever been involved in SAP implementations, you know, and good Lord, the companies that I've done multiple of those projects as a facilitator on the project, and they go, we're going to implement SAP, but we want to tell you how all our processes should run, so you modify the software to suit our processes. Whereas SAP have spent a lot of time figuring out what world-class benchmark processes would look like, and they built a platform around that, right? So why do most of these projects blow out? Because everyone wants to stay the same but have the platform. SAP is saying, no, the platform is going to cause some changes to your work processes, but you'll be more efficient. And so the whole thing goes pear-shaped because people don't want to change that much from the status quo. Status quo is simply that we understand the patterns. We know what the dots are and we know what the connections are between the dots. There's this weird space, and then on the other side of that space, out here, which basically is an outward ever expanding opportunity is progress. And what's in the middle here is chaos. And so, you know, there's a simple view on this. All progress lives on the far side of chaos. We actually have to go through chaos to find progress. It's how things work. And chaos isn't really chaotic. And I can provide evidence of this. In chaos, people say, oh, we can see the dots, but we don't know how to connect the dots. And the people that do really well are the ones that can show people how to connect the dots in the most logical way. And as soon as you connect the dots, chaos doesn't look like chaos anymore. And all progress lives on the far side of chaos. Now, I think everything has a pattern. I think absolutely everything has a pattern. And to prove that, I started wondering what the most random thing was that I could think of. And then I thought luck. Luck is pretty random. So let's see if luck has patterns. And turns out it does. In fact, there's a professor in the United Kingdom called Robert Wiseman that did the luck factor studies. And lucky people display some qualities different to unlucky people. And one of those things, here's an interesting thought. One of the things that lucky people display differently to unlucky people is they smile twice as often as the average person does in a conversation. So are they lucky, or is everyone else just trying to help them? Because they're pretty nice people to be around, you know? They believe the solution is possible way after everyone else has quit. So he gave them puzzles to solve, and he gave the people that identified as lucky puzzles to solve that couldn't be solved. And he gave unlucky people puzzles that could be solved, and the unlucky people all quit. And the lucky people were still at it, even though their puzzles couldn't be solved. Lucky people see opportunity differently. And there's a bunch of other stuff. So I thought, I'm going to try and apply this. How do you test luck? Well, let's enter competitions to win cars and trips and stuff like that, and see if we can find some patterns. Now, my wife and I and our daughters have won about $1.5 million worth of prizes over the last 15 years. We average about $50,000 a year, you know, movie tickets. We've been to London twice as a prize on competitions. We've been to Disney World in Florida twice, and I live in Perth in Western Australia. We won cars and TVs, and the current affairs shows on Australia put my wife on TV, you know, at Christmas time or at Easter, whatever, and they say, we're going to bring Australia's competition queen on, and we're going to talk about how you can win things at Christmas time while you're shopping. And if we teach people what to do, they will usually win a trip within about 3 months, because luck has patterns. It's identifiable. You can find, if you connect the dots, you can absolutely find the patterns. And then people will say to me, I sometimes speak about this at conference, and people say to me, oh, I tried that thing and I didn't win anything. And I've learned to ask them if they've actually entered anything yet. And usually they say not yet. And I'm going, well, that's kind of the first step in the pattern. You actually have to put an entry in, you know. I've even had one person say, well, I put it out to the universe. I'm going, universe can't hold a pen. That's your job. It's asking you to hold a pen and fill this thing in, right? But we have found the patterns. Like a certain size envelope gets pulled out of the barrel more often than any other size. Like we've gone down to that level of intimacy. The more intimate you are with the marketplace, the more often you win. It is just that simple. So we're not trying to figure out how to win the prize for us. We're trying to serve the person who's judging the competition based on what we think they're looking for. And the day I found out that a lot of companies run the 25 words or less competition, they're running it to get consumers to give them marketing taglines. That's why they're running it. So in 25 words or less, why do you want a new car? If you say, I've got my old car's, you know, clapped out and it's a bomb, that's not going to win it. But bumper to bumper, end to end, Hyundai Accent, a girl's best friend, will win you a car. Because they're looking for someone to come up with a tagline that a consumer can relate to that we don't have to pay for. We've won 5 international trips with the same 25 words or less. So when you find, and all we're doing is getting intimate with the marketplace and putting it out there. So chaos is this weird space you've got to go through, but once you see the patterns, everything moves really quickly. On the leading edge of chaos, and Marcus gave us a great kind of context around it, is leadership. And all salespeople are leaders. because the job of the leader is to lead people into chaos safely. No one enters chaos willingly.
Can you show
They-
your screen? Because you're
sorry.
drawing it.
Sorry. Yes, the leading edge of chaos is leadership. And the job of the leader, whether that leader is a salesperson or a leader in a company, is to lead people into chaos safely. No one enters chaos unless they're forced in by circumstance or led in by a person. And for a leader or a salesperson to lead someone into chaos safely, your courage is the driver of their level of willingness, their confidence, as they lean into chaos. And then innovation's on the far side of chaos, but we can have a different conversation about that. And I think one of the things that we've lost sight of in the internet world, remember when salespeople used to be educators?
Mm-hmm.
Remember when you used to, like, your fridge broke down and it was 15 years old, so there's no point repairing it. And you used to go to the white goods store and say, I've got to buy a fridge, but oh my goodness, tell me about fridges. And they used to help you through chaos. There's all these fridges. How do we make sense of this? Now, our fridge broke down a few weeks ago. It's 15 years old. And I just went to the shops, the 3 shops identified with the price, and said, I want this fridge at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning. So one guy said, well, I can't deliver it for 4 weeks. I'm going, you're not listening to me, mate. My fridge is broken down. He said, well, you can hire a fridge for about $150 for a month. And I'm going, yeah, but I want to buy a fridge today. Anyway, he wasn't listening to me, so I walked away. Went to the next shop. The guy said, I can get this delivered for you tomorrow, as long as that's the fridge you want. And I said, well, what else you got? He said, I'm not the fridge guy. The fridge guy is not at work today, but you sound like you know what you want. If that's the fridge you want, I go, well, that's the one I've looked at online, but what else well, I'm not your fridge guy. I go to the third shop. I said, I want to look at fridges. The guy said, I'm the fridge guy. And I said, right. And he said, so did your fridge break down on Saturday or Sunday? I said, how do you know it broke down? He said, everyone that comes in by 9 o'clock on a Monday morning, their fridge is broken down on the weekend. All of a sudden, I'm
That
hearing
was the
someone.
moment.
Yeah, right. Tipping point. I'm hearing someone who I now know knows the market. Intimate. And he goes, you need a fridge today. And I said, I do. And he said, why have you picked that fridge? I said, I want 2 side-by-side doors with a vertical freezer. I don't want a drawer underneath. I want the vertical freezer. He says, right, there's 2 fridges like that. One's an LG and one's a Samsung. And I wanted the Samsung. And he said, I wouldn't buy the Samsung. I said, why is that? And he said, we get more of them back on warranty than we do the LGs. I went, okay. And he said, so I can get that delivered for you today for $50 and installed. And they'll take the old fridge and all the packaging away if that's something you want to do. And like, what has he actually done other than just listen to me? And he flipped a really important kind of process on its head in the sales arena, if you like. So many people just sell the features. This is a great fridge. It's got a little door you can open to get the milk out. It's got this kind of freezer, and it does this with the water and all this, and it makes round ice cubes, spherical ice cubes. Great. What's the benefit of that? Oh, well, spherical ice cubes are really cool. Everyone that comes to your house will love the fact that you're putting spherical ice cubes in the water, and the little door to open for the milk means you don't open the main door, and so the fridge performs more effectively. Fantastic. And that is about where...
You need to show your screen again.
Oh, thank you, Marcus. Sorry. And that is about where most salespeople end their conversation, and we call this product spec. The guy that I met went straight to outcome, which is, what day did your fridge break down, Saturday or Sunday? Which is a hell of a clever way of raising outcome as an issue. This is in response to what Juan was saying. You've got to go straight to outcome, if you like, and almost forget your desire to want to talk about your product or service. Does that make sense? It's like you've got to go straight into their chaos zone that they're struggling with, which means you've got to be super intimate with what their chaos looks like. That's the trick, being super intimate with what their chaos look like and being so calm about it that they know that for some reason you're probably different to everybody else. I mean, this guy was calm. He wasn't stressed. He wasn't looking up stuff on the system. He wasn't saying, oh, it's going to be tricky getting it to you today. It's like, what day did this break down, Saturday or Sunday? Everyone that comes in here by 9 o'clock on a Monday morning, your fridge break down on the weekend. Like, that tells me he's done this a million times. This is going to be, sorted out.
Simon, the way I describe that is he helped you buy your fridge rather than selling you his fridge.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's a great description, right? And he wasn't even talking about the fridge, right? He helped me buy the fridge that was going to solve my problem.
Yeah, but he needed to be, what he did was and that was the way back in the day. I've got the grey hairs, as we both have. Back in the days before the internet, when we were the source of information, that's how sales used to happen. What happened was, of course, buyers became empowered with the advent of the internet. They didn't need that advice, or they didn't think they needed that advice from salespeople. And what salespeople need to do, those of us that still remember how we used to work, is we actually take people back from wherever they happen to have their decision, take them back to what is the outcome? What is the result? What will this look like when it's working the way things work? And typically, or often, they've never even been asked that question, and they probably haven't actually thought it through themselves. They're thinking more in terms of their needs rather than their results.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Patrick, you are so spot on, right? Because that's my point where I was making, once upon a time we went to buy white goods and you had to be educated. Once upon a time when we went to buy white goods, the whole thing looked chaotic, right? And so we had to go and talk to somebody. Now, with internet and democratization of information, there's this little layer that doesn't look chaotic, and it's usually price comparison, that we think we're figuring out what we want to buy, right? But in truth, you walk into that white goods store to look at fridges and you got no clue in reality about what should you be buying and how do you get it. That's exactly the point. Like, we want to take people to their outcome. It's not the fridge that I need, it's cold food.
Yes.
Frozen food. And what I actually need is to try and save all the food that we've been storing in styrofoam boxes with ice for 2 days. And trying to find food in ice that's melting is just a pain in the ass, to be honest. But I've got this problem with, we've just gone shopping, we've got $300 worth of food in the fridge, and the fridge is broken down, right? So now we've been storing ice for 2 days, and I need that problem fixed, and it's going to be fixed by a fridge. You're so right. But people think they're coming to you for this information, which is why we've got to be provocative and take people to a deeper level. This guy told me in a matter of minutes, he proved to me that I could believe in him. Belief-based selling. And how do you know you can believe in somebody? Well, you instantly get a shot of hope rather than a sense of doubt. As soon as the guy says, well, I could deliver this for you in a couple of weeks, all the doubt triggers are firing off, because I've just told you my fridge is broken down. Like, you don't really care. I'm the fridge guy. So what day did your fridge break down? I'm listening to him going, he's the guy to fix my problem. So then, Patrick, in exactly what you're saying, what if we reversed it and we just never got into benefits and features until they believed that we were the hopeful point of, we were the hopeful point of contact, and let's just focus on your outcomes and have that conversation. So, when people are getting
Simon,
into,
if I could just interrupt you, and I think that's the greatest challenge for salespeople today, is that you're coming from the point of view of quickly establishing trust and belief, the perception that takes a long time to do, when in fact you can do it really, really quickly. But it only gets difficult to do when your self-interest shows, because that undermines trust. And so the typical salesperson's dialogue more or less kills trust from the get-go. From the moment they introduce themselves, they undermine trust. If you don't do that, and in fact sort of occupy the buyer, listen to the buyer and occupy their space, you can grow trust incredibly quickly. You can grow it in the first meeting. And most people don't believe that that can happen. And that, I think, is the biggest barrier for salespeople to overcome. How quickly can they get buyers to the stage where they will be vulnerable and prepared to share and listen? You can do that far more quickly, but just shut up about yourself, shut up about your product and your company and everything else.
Yeah, there's a I do agree with you that trust can be formed quickly. It can be lost equally quickly, but it doesn't have to be a long tail. Yeah, and it doesn't have to be but it doesn't have to be a long tail of you know, meetings and visits and things like that to form trust quite quickly. Unfortunately, we live in a space and time. This is probably my biggest bugbear right now. We live in a space and time, and I share this model all the time. So some of you may have seen me sharing it before, I'm not sure, but we live in a space and time where the world of business has been told to be a vendor, sell products and services, which is kind of fine, but the market's always going to buy them on price if you just sell it at product spec level. And so then content marketing and authority-based marketing told us to become a thought leader. And I think, and I apologize if this offends anybody, but I think the fastest way to destroy belief in you by the customer is to call yourself a thought leader. And the reason for that is because the whole concept of thought leadership has been commoditized. And we know that because there are people on LinkedIn calling themselves a thought leader and only 2 people look at their post, right? To be a thought leader, you need 2 things. You need some original thought and you need followers. And so, you know, particularly in the complex sale, you know, I'm a thought leader. Well, there's a certain amount of ego required, you know, to take that position. But, you know, Patrick, to what you're saying, the moment I start talking about myself as a thought leader, I'm no longer a listener, right? And so, and the customer knows that. And you know, I know in England,
Become
because
intimidating.
you know, yeah, well, it's not. Yeah, that's true. But you know, I'm a convict stock, right? So I know this is true in England because lots of people in Australia came from there. We were just the ones you sent away, and you know, and came to another country. So in Australia, there's a pretty big BS meter that most people carry with them, and I know through, you know, the UK that is true as well. And more I'm seeing it in the States when we're working in there. People's BS meters are high.
People are
And so
crying out for authenticity.
they're
They're crying out for people they can trust, that they can depend on.
Pleading for it. So the next level, when this isn't really working for people, is people become the hero for their client. So in here, it's information, but up here, it's strength. When you become a hero to your client, you can solve their problem and offer them strength. The problem is if you're the hero, the client if there's a hero, someone's got to be the victim. And the worst thing we can do is make the client the victim in the story. And you know, they're not good clients, they don't behave well, and you have to sell both of these based on ego, which is just an acronym for edging goodwill out.
And on that note, the neuroscience is really very clear. If you focus on pain discovery, if you focus on stuff that serves you rather than the customer, you trigger their brain to see you as a threat.
Yeah.
Your job is to get invited over the threshold and into the hearth. That's how we get intimacy. You cannot possibly do that if you are trying to be the hero seller. And if you're trying to ratchet up their pain because you believe that is going to motivate them to change, next time they speak to you, they will associate you with that pain, that emotion. That does not serve you. So this approach that Simon is about to talk about is effectively, how do you get there in a pain-free discovery way that is allying yourself with the customer against their problem towards the accomplishment of the better future, helping them get across that chasm of chaos by joining the dots and making that journey safe towards progress. That's what we're working towards.
Can I just ask a
Pain.
question here, or maybe
Sure.
it's both a question and make a comment, that most selling practice assumes that buyers and sellers, buyers in particular, operating in logical mode, particularly in B2B. You know, we have spreadsheets, PowerPoint presentations, bullet points, return on investment analysis, and all the rest of it. When fundamentally, we're animals. We're the same irrational people that we were walking through the savannas. And the last 10,000 years of civilization hasn't changed that. The status quo, we've evolved to stay safe. We've evolved to preserve the status quo. Change is a threat. If we got outside our cave, there was a chance we got eaten by something. And so, and as Marcus is talking about the neuroscience, it's really only in the last 20 to 30 years that we've really got to understand human behavior, thanks to, and a lot of what we thought was about human behavior was in fact wrong. And so my question is, a lot of these things you're talking about relate to ego and all the rest of it, relate to people's perceptions, their cognitive biases and all the rest. So the question is, to what extent should we be educating salespeople more to understand human beings, their irrational nature, and the fact that 95% of the time they're an autopilot, they're irrational, not rational. So to what extent then should we really be catering for that? We talk about customers, when in fact, who we're dealing with is buyers. We're really dealing with individual human beings, right?
Yeah.
Even if
And we're selling to the brain, we're not selling to the corporation.
yes.
If we don't understand that we're selling to an individual brain each time, then odds are we will create some form of dissonance. Our job is to keep their amygdala calm, and the easiest way of doing that is keeping ours out of the way. By being prepared, planned.
It's absolutely true. I'll come back to the top of this in a minute, because you trigger a really interesting thought around this, Patrick. I want to talk about, now my first working life was in electrics and electronics. And so I've spent more time than I can think about dealing with the digital sine wave. So, those coming from a technology background will be familiar with the digital sine wave, which is 1 and 0, on and off, right? And so if this was a digital TV signal, you've got picture up here, and you've got blue, and you've got blue screen down here. Oh, sorry, actually, you've got blue screen in here, and you'll have picture down here, or no picture at all, no signal at all. It's on and off, basically. And the logical pathway, Patrick, in sales is a yes or a no. The logic is often binary. People are trying to get to yes or no, right? And in fact, we hear a lot of people saying in sales, every sales conversation has to get to one of three outcomes: yes, no, or I'm still thinking about it, which means we're still actually selling, right? The problem with this is that whilst we live in an increasingly digital world, humans are still analog. And the analog sine wave has all this grey scale in between. Some of us are old enough to remember standing on top of a TV at a holiday house somewhere with a little rabbit ear antenna to try and get a picture for an important sporting event or something that happened to be on while you're away. And eventually the person standing on one leg with the arm in the air and the antenna gets a picture and says, stay there, right? They can't see the screen. It's an impossible position to hold for the next 90 minutes, but stay there because we've got a picture, right? But there's all this grey scale in between. And so one of the things I'm often talking to business leaders about is, the failure in the business is about these spaces. It's not about where analog and digital intersect through here. Then if you're selling to, so Patrick, we're only selling to the logical brain when we're intersecting at the on or off conversation. There's all this emotional kind of brain going on that you'd hope the salesperson actually has some understanding about, right? But then the problem gets worse than that. This is the CEO. The CFO looks like this. they're not even aligned. The CMO looks like this. They're not aligned. And so they're not even intersecting into the logical conversation at the same place. And so how much do we need salespeople these days to have almost like a masters of psychology? I think selling is one of the most full contact schools of psychology in the world. You know, selling is a full contact sport, and we need to be hiring people. You know, we think with the internet, we can set up, you know, click funnels and flow throughs and automated sequences and everything else, but it's still humans selling to humans. And a big part of what in enterprise selling, particularly, a big part of what the salesperson is doing is just trying to get these things to overlap in the same place for a start. You know, can we just get an alignment on the internal conversation, and then can we understand, you know, what's going on down here that's causing you to have a nervousness? Because our products, our products and services will solve your problem. You know, at the intersection of these points, but the sale is made in the gray space in between. So we live in a world, you know, we many of us grew up in a world where the salespeople were teachers and educators. Then we kind of went away from that with the democratization of information and the internet and the automation, and the world lost its mind over the ability to automate sales funnels and everything else. We got swept up by data, which is enormously valuable and useful, but data is most useful as a tool for intel, so that you can shift the emotional state of the buyer, you know, towards you, meaning they feel safer with you than they do without you, and they know they're going to win if they buy from you, which are the two big things we're selling.
And this is also illustrative of the importance of meeting the buyer where they are, not where you wish they were. Because as the buyer goes through that analog journey, our job is to meet them at the points where they have a struggling moment, either before, during, or after. Our job is to help them make sense of their reality, understand what is possible and within their reach, and advance towards making a good decision well. Because as they go through the buying journey, they go from the passive looking phase where they are learning how. So that's on the up cycle. Then what happens is they move into the active looking phase. Now what they're trying to do is work out what their options are. This is where, for the first time, they are willing to have a conversation with a salesperson about buying, where they want to speak to a salesperson. 80% of the buyer's journey happens before that. You have an uncontested opportunity to speak to your prospect. Can you turn your microphone off, whoever that is, please? You have an opportunity to engage over time and create the conditions for trust to exist. Whoever's on that microphone talking to their wife, please turn it off. Thank you. The challenge that we've got is that because the buyers are entering and leaving the buying cycle at different stages, we have to be patient. We have to plan ahead to meet those individuals where they are and choreograph the whole process. If we can't bring them all together to make a good decision well, we have failed. It's not the buyer's fault. It's not the market's fault. It is entirely on us. And they come to us for leadership and a safe pair of hands. And if we don't make sure that we align with our buyer and meet them on their journey at the right time, have the right conversations, and deliver real value, we've got no business wasting their time.
Yeah. Marcus, let me give everyone a really practical tool that they can use for anyone that is in enterprise selling, where you know you need to sell to more than one person inside a company. You may well be in a meeting with the lead scout that's been sent out to find out who's out there. You could be in early stages of a procurement process or something like that. This little diagram, presented the right way, has won me more business than I can tally up. You know, so I'm in the early stage conversation. with somebody, and I know that I'm selling consultancy. I know that I'm going to offer them a complimentary 3-hour project planning session with all the right people in the room to help them get a Gantt chart for the project, whether I work with them or not. That language is really specific. So I'm meeting with somebody and saying, listen, before I write a proposal for you, I don't have a daily rate. I write the proposal against the project, and the more I know about the project and understand, the better. What I'm willing to offer is a complimentary 3-hour project planning session, and what you will get out of that is a detailed Gantt chart for the project. So whether I am actually the person that helps you with this or not, you will have a detailed project flow if we can put the right people in the room. And usually the person says, well, that's interesting. What would you do in that? And so then I say, so here's what happens when there's a project like this on the table inside an organization. You're familiar with the digital sine wave, and decision making is digital. You and the members of the management team are trying to make a decision about, is this a yes or a no project, and what does the project look like? And if we understand the project well, we can make that decision about whether we should be a yes or a no. Is that true? And he goes, yeah, well, that's what we're investigating right now. What I know is that inside your organization, humans are analog, and that looks like that. So everybody's got gray space where they have lack of knowledge, and they've got perspective and opinion and agendas and things like that. But the problem is worse than that. Different humans inside your organization have their analog sine wave at different levels. The biggest thing I'm going to do for you in this project planning session is get all of these lined up. So there's just one sine wave amongst the key people, and you have a really clear project definition at the end. And then I'm happy to put a pricing schedule against that and show you what that looks like. You walk away with the plan that I would execute if I was doing this work with you. But you're going to come out of that session with all of the sine waves lined up, if you like, all of the people lined around what should be a pretty logical decision to make. Listening to what Patrick said, right? Because everybody that's trying to do work like this is wrestling with the small p politics of the organization and the emotional kind of nuances. So I'm going to come in and get them all aligned on the same page, a really clean project definition and a Gantt chart and a good project flow, so that really solid logical decisions can be made on this. Now, whether I do the work with you or not is not my interest at the moment. My interest at the moment is that there's a really clear project brief. Then I can give you the most accurate estimate of what you'd have to invest with me for me to work with you. I never walk out of that 3-hour planning session without the work. At some point when I start building the Gantt chart, someone says, what does your diary look like during that time? And I know they've already made the purchase at that point. And so, when you can visually show this intimacy of many of you are selling into the same sorts of environments. How many people have you sold to who know that that's what's going on, and they're wrestling with that inside their organization, trying to get stuff lined up across key people with no clue how they're going to do that? But as the provider or the potential solution, a big part of what we've got to do is create this change inside chaos. These little models allow us to move to this level at the top, where instead of being the hero, we become the sage. Every hero has a sage. And my favorite story is Luke Skywalker, right? Luke is the hero of the story, no doubt. Luke's got all the energy of youth and everything else. And his ultimate sage is Yoda. Little diminutive life form that doesn't look that strong. And Luke has come back from battle where he hasn't done very well, and he's pretty frustrated. And Yoda's trying to calm him down and everything else. And he says to Luke, grab your lightsaber, Luke, and come at me. And Luke says, no, master, I'll hurt you. And Yoda says, no, grab your lightsaber and come at me. And so Luke comes at him, not real hard. And Yoda flicks his lightsaber out of the way. So Luke picks it up and has another go, and Yoda flicks it out of the way again. Now Luke's getting a bit antsy. So he goes a bit harder, and Yoda flicks it out of the way. And then Luke is cranky now. So he's really going for it. And Yoda just shuts his eyes, flicks the lightsaber, Luke's disarmed, and Luke doesn't understand what happens. And he says to Yoda, I don't understand. And Yoda says, it's the Force, Luke. You're not tapping
Share your
into the
screen.
Force. It's the Force. You're not tapping into the Force. And Luke just gets this awareness. What the sage always does, and some of this is how you show up in the market, the sage brings profound genius to the marketplace. They come not from ego, but from wisdom. So they're not selling product spec, they're selling the deeper wisdom behind it. They have what I call powerful calm, meaning they don't cause people to become frantic. They have this calming effect on the circumstance, so they don't sell from pressure. So much of this is anti-traditional selling. They sell from presence, so they don't use false scarcity and urgency and all that sort of thing. It's just who they are when they show up. And then practical simplicity, the ability to explain the most complex things with clarity. But when I started building this model and we started getting companies to sell from a completely different space, an interesting thing happens. If you vacate the hero space, who gets to fill it? The moment you vacate the hero space, who gets to fill it? It's the client. And when you stop thinking about your client as an ideal avatar and you start thinking about them as a hero, we call them the hero client, everything shifts, right? And so, and you've got to label them as heroes. So we've got a company in the US that's built a really impressive AI-driven data platform for public defenders. So the public defenders are under-resourced, they don't have time. Prosecution and large companies have all the resources in the world, but Legal Server is a platform that allows a public defender to meet the client for the first time outside the courtroom, get handed their file, and they're going to be in court in 15 minutes. They can go onto their phone into Legal Server. They can find out everything about that person they're defending, all their previous history. They can also find out everything about the arresting officer. Could be a young 18-year-old black guy that's been arrested. Legal Server will say that police officer has had 13 complaints against him. There are 22 videos on YouTube of them actually, being abusive. They've had only 30% of their arrests actually turn into anything, blah, 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 blah. Now that attorney's walking into court when the prosecution and the judge are expecting them to ask for a delay, and the judge is saying, so do you want a delay? And the defender is going, no, we want to move ahead, Your Honor. Today, we're in court. The prosecution have brought us here. We'd like to go ahead. And the prosecution are scrambling now because, hang on, we were expecting you to delay it. And then the defender's saying, first of all, I'd like to actually talk about the terms of the arrest. And I want to draw some attention to the arresting officer, and away they go. And so the guy that started it, speaks at conferences and things like that. And he talks about public defenders as the heroes on the front line in a system driven by money, a justice system driven by money. These public defenders are the hero on the front line of fairness and justice, equal fairness and justice for all, in a system that is not designed for equal fairness and justice, but in fact is designed around money. And you people are the heroes, and we had to equip you with a platform that evened the game up. What happens to everyone in that room when they immediately make them, when he makes them the hero like that? Now,
Absolutely.
He never talks about the platform. He never demonstrates the software. He's just talking about the outcomes and them as the hero. And Legal Server and the company behind it are the sages equipping them with the force, if you like. It's a different positioning.
Could you share the genius model that you developed around selling? Because I think that would be really instructive, so that people can see how the genius of sales is best delivered. Because when you build everything from the customer out and their outcome and that $1 million promise, then your focus and everything that you do is built around that. Then the decisions that you make in the sale are already made for you, because that's your filter.
Yeah, so we
Could you share your screen, please?
Yeah, well, I'm just trying to navigate my way through the update to Notability, which has just been a pain recently. Like, they've updated and I cannot find anything. They've moved all the...
Does anyone have any questions at this stage while Simon's dealing with the tech?
Yeah, it's Nick here. I am interested in understanding that piece, Marcus, that you said, selling without focusing on the pain. It was only, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago that I was listening to somebody who said,
pain equals dollar, dollar, dollar. I know I was wrong. And it
that's
works.
okay.
It works, but it doesn't, it's not the best way. And we can have...
And that's okay. And that's what I'm here to do, is right, is to learn along with you, learn, a different way, or a valuable way, equally valuable way of looking at it. And so that's the bit, because I don't, that pain piece, I think you're saying, you're right. I was talking to somebody the other day and they had their head in their hands going, oh, my natural reaction was, ooh, that could be good for me.
Yeah.
But
if
then
on the other hand, you flip it and you say, okay, so let's pretend we've managed to resolve that and everything's gone according to plan. Describe what that better future looks like.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me what would be good about that. Who would it affect?
Yeah.
How would it improve things? And you build that picture up and then say, okay, if we can accomplish that, is there any reason why you wouldn't want to develop a plan to execute it? Okay, let's do that then and work backwards. The customer does all the work. If you look at what Simon did, he had the customer in that 3-hour workshop put their fingerprints all over the proposal. They designed it. They developed it. It was their language. It was their outcomes, their input. And what he did was choreograph and facilitate. Prospects don't argue with their own data.
Yeah, I mean, so much of what Patrick has shared in his comments is exactly what sits behind some of the models that we build and thinking that we do. If salespeople are leaders and our prospects will follow us into chaos, proportional to the courage we display, right? One of the most courageous things for a salesperson to do is hand control of the sale to the customer.
Yeah.
Now, when you step into facilitation rather than selling, you're actually inviting the customer in. And what if they don't see it exactly the way you see it? Well, the very best thing you could do is incorporate the way they see it into the conversation you're having, because it's hard for someone to disagree with a conversation they help to construct. When we're actually just sitting in front of them saying, here's what's going on, we've got this solution for you, it's easy for people to disagree with that. That's just an opinion. And Nick, to your point, this the problem I've always had with the pain, find the problem, aggravate the problem, create more pain, etc., etc. The two types of motivation are away from and toward. Away from motivation says, there's some pain that I'm experiencing. I'll make it red, like a red traffic light. There's some pain that I'm experiencing. Years and years and years ago, through to my mid-40s, I used to be an ultra-distance runner. Like run 100 kilometers at a time and stuff like that. And when you're running 100 kilometers, and twice I did that around athletics tracks, so 250 laps of an athletics stadium. When you're running 100 kilometers, all you're trying to do at the start is get as far away from the starting line as you can. And so you count upwards. I've done, 5 laps is 2 kilometers. I've done 2 kilometers. I've done 4 kilometers. I've done 8 kilometers. I've done 10. And then you cross the 50-kilometer mark and you start counting down. I've got 48 to go, 46 to go, 44 to go, so on. But the reality is, I can be 50 kilometers away from the starting line in any direction if we just focus on getting away from the pain, which means you can trigger and aggravate the pain for the customer and you might be one of the directions, but all your competitors are the other directions. And we all know the stats about how often people buy from the second company they spoke to or the third company they spoke to, right? And so the problem I always had, Nick, with pain-based selling was you create this aggravation, but you often just set up the conversation for the next company that comes along and uses toward-based selling, which basically says, show them how to win. What do you want? So pain is about, make me safe, but you need to show me how to win. They're the two things we sell. What do I want? And when it comes to what you want, there's only one
just
direction.
to make a comment there, Simon, I think, because it might be lost on a lot of people, want is really important as distinct from need, because we typically, you may mention that, traditionally salespeople focus on need. That's not what they want.
Well, look, it's really interesting, Patrick. So, I'm running 100 kilometers. I want to get as far away from the finish line as I can. Interesting thing, the 3/4 mark is interesting. In long distance running, most people drop out around the 3/4 mark. And what happens at the 3/4 mark is you've addressed your need. I sailed through 50 kilometers like it was nothing. And I thought, this is going to be a great run. At 75 kilometers, everything was hurting. I knew I had massive blisters inside my shoes on both feet. My outside knee was really, really sore. And I knew I was doing damage to the knee. And I got to 75 kilometers and I go, well, that's pretty good. Most people don't run 75 kilometers. Like, I've served my need. I've done something pretty amazing. But I wanted to get to 100 kilometers, Patrick. There's 25 to go. Who's going to get me through that 25, right? And there's only one direction that can get me there. And it turns out it was the people in my support team who went on a rotation and ran 5-kilometer blocks with me, just saying, let's do 2 more. Let's just do 2 more laps, right? And count them down. So, Nick, part of the problem with this pain and fear-based selling is they can get away from their pain. Thank you very much for highlighting that pain for me. But I can get away from it. And it's yo-yo dieting, right? I lost some weight, addressed my need, bounced back again. And then I'm back in the conversation. Lost some weight, addressed my need, bounced back in again. It's this cycle that goes on if there's not something pulling us toward it. This is hope. Without hope, everything's lost. We need to create hope in the sales process. And we need to create tension, not pain, but tension at this end. The key to, if there's no tension, there's no sale to be made. But we need to create tension on the left and we need to create hope on the right. Now, unfortunately, what creates hope is certainty. When we're selling, we need to be willing to say to the client, this will work. Like, we can't go out to the market and go, all things being equal, and if you do your bit, we'll do our bit, this should be okay. Like, the word should never, just can't creep into it, because of the hope, they want certainty, right? Can I give you a tip about guarantees? I was drawing the futures model at the start before we kind of got into it. Where is it? And the futures model says, this is where we are today. People say you can't predict the future, but we actually can. You're either going to be in a green line heading up to everything's great and you're going to win, or you're on a red line heading down, everything's horrible and you're losing. And the truth is, people drift. That's why they end up on the red line. And we need to make we need to make conscious, informed decisions. That's what puts you on the green line. And so, we specialize in jumping our clients to the green line. Just listen to the language. When we work with clients, we specialize in jumping you to the green line so you're on there and you know it. We do the reset, recalibration, cleanup necessary to put you on the green line, and then we're going to help you stay there. We know what the gates are that you've got to walk through to stay on the green line. No one falls off the green line. Everyone just behaves their way off the green line. If your company wants to implement this new software platform or whatever it is, we know the gates are. It's hard to guarantee the result for you, but we've done this with so many people, we can absolutely guarantee the pathway. if we walk through those gates and shut them behind us, this will happen. Like, the futures model is the key to guarantees. I can absolutely guarantee the pathway. If we walk through those gates, shut them behind us, call it out when people come off the green line, when we behave our way off the green line, when we avoid making a decision, we get distracted, whatever, we will get to the outcome. And so all of these are conversations that we can be having all the time. And the model that Marcus is talking about, do you mean my genius model, Marcus?
Yeah, your genius model.
Yeah.
Because I think the power of selling incontrovertible value based on the customer's want and need, and in full service of them, is just totally revolutionary for most people who've grown up in traditional selling.
Yeah. So what we've done is codified company genius into a single model. So I can take a company that sells the most complex thing, and I've done this with a company that sells warships, building and sustaining warships, and we can drop it in, we can turn it into a single model like this. This is the genius model. That takes about 7 minutes to explain. When you're standing in front of a procurement team explaining a very complex offer or solution, but doing it in a very simple model, at that point, people go, how come no one else has explained it that simply for me before? This practical simplicity. So codifying genius is the key to this. And when you can present your genius in a codified visual way, it becomes a blueprint for the brain. And so these are, these genius models are bespoke for every company. In our company, my company's genius model is to help our clients have absolute sales certainty. What does that mean? Not just for them, but for their prospects. So if you sell something, your prospects know that thing's going to happen. How do we get that? By having a richer, deeper connection with them than they have with anyone else. Having superior conversion, rate, speed, and quality, and having a remarkable reputation in the marketplace. How do we do that? How do we drive those things? Connection is driven by you showing up with profound genius. And you've seen this before, right? Moving from ego-based selling to wisdom-based selling. And then powerful calm. Moving from pressure to presence. When you share real wisdom with a marketplace and you have this powerfully calming presence, you automatically gain a richer, deeper connection with your prospects than they have with anyone else. They feel safer with you than they do with anyone else. And then the ability for practical simplicity. Move from complex to clear. Have little parcels of clarity. When you show up with real presence and you have real clarity, conversion takes care of itself. When you bring real wisdom to the marketplace with real clarity, your reputation grows in the marketplace. And then how do we do those 9 things? Well, we walk through these 9 accelerators and we build a suite of models. And this one down here is actually buyer safety, which is a principle of selling that we teach people. Make the customer safer with you than they would be without you. Market intimacy is up here. Know more about your market than any of your nearest competitors. It's interesting. A lot of people say we're better at this than everyone else in our marketplace. And my question is, how do you know that? Have you bought from every one of your competitors? Have you been through their sales process? Have you tried their product? What's the intel that's telling you you're better than everybody else? Incontestable value. Incontestable value. Can't be disputed. You put it in front of people and they go, yep, got it. Makes sense, market reach, the ability to actually get to people, but in a human form and so on. We walk through a bunch of these, but when you can take something like this and say to your marketplace, we're all about making the middle of this happen. The heart of our business, we put everything that you want at the center of our framework for how we do this, the genius of our company. And our genius is a 3-legged stool. Profound genius, powerful calm, and practical simplicity. You take one of those circles away, you lose a ton of it. And this is where the rubber hits the road. These are the capabilities that we're going to install to make that happen. Everything shifts. You know, software. I don't know if any of you sell software, but we teach software companies in enterprise software to go to the prospect and say to them, any software that you're looking at that does not have a robust design model behind it that they can show you is not software you should buy. How much software on the marketplace would have a robust design model like this sitting behind it, would you say, as opposed to it's kind of been built over time based on people having these problems? And we have so many clients in the software space that win business just on that one basis. You shouldn't buy a software solution, enterprise software solution, unless you see the design model behind it. Would it be okay if I walk you through our design model? And then they're going to walk them through their genius model, which is really how they approach the process of designing software that makes a difference. And so it's this idea, Marcus, of codifying genius. I just want to do a bit of a test in a minute. How many of you in your business, and it probably comes, if you're the founder, it probably comes from you. If you're not the founder, you probably still found it somehow. How many of you would say you have real intuitive genius in the business? You just kind of know what to do when it's time to do it, or you know what the solution will need to be with them, or you know how to connect the bits together for them, just kind of in the chat or whatever. How many of you know you've got that real intuitive genius? Just put a yes if it's in the chat, and then we'll wrap it up. Used to, right? So Patrick used to, and if you don't codify it, it is hard for the customer to buy intuition. They cannot place hope on tuition. They cannot place certainty on intuition.
Yeah, what I mean used to is I'm a sole operator now, but when I was in enterprises, for instance, Oracle, running a region, yeah, we developed that. And in fact, we used the method that you illustrated where we would go in and do we called an implementation planning study with a prospect. We'd sit and do the exercise. We always got the job. And that was our default mode of operation. We if we couldn't get into that mode, then we wouldn't pursue the opportunity. But we knew, and I'd used it before that in a company called Prime Computer, if you might remember them. That dates me. Yeah. Exactly the same model. And all it was the prospect can see their future mapped out. More to the point, though, they can see how you can implement it and achieve it. Because we didn't call it a genius model, but out of it came was this is how we're going to go about doing it. So they had a perception of their future, and also this is how we would implement your future. That looked and sounded really credible, and we're off to the races.
Yeah,
you know, they'd often have to produce a document that would go to tender.
Can I make a really important point that underpins everything that we've talked about today? Human beings do not fear change. Human beings fear the uncertainty that comes with change.
Yeah, correct. What
we are giving them with this type of framework is a certain pathway to the better future that they want. That makes you their ally. And that is appealing and attractive.
And it changes everything about the sales conversation, what Patrick's just said. And I would do it with models. I'd be saying, you know, there's two futures. We know what they are. One is this green line heading up. One is this red line heading down. This is the outcome you want, right? And you kind of want to be protected against this, correct? And they go, for sure. So back to Nick's point, you know, this is the tension piece, Nick. Rather than pain, let's build tension. Do you want to be in the green or the red? No, I want to be in the green, right? Sell them their future. At outcome level, now they need belief. Do I believe that you can do it? We know how to do this. We built a framework that can put you on that green line and keep you there. Now the framework connects to the pathway and walks you through the gates that's going to give you that outcome. Do you want, would you be happy for me to walk through that framework and show you how we can be so bold as to promise that kind of certainty for you? Who's not going to listen to that, right? And then you're into a really robust conversation they probably have never had with somebody in your market space. But there's a courage attached to this, and that is that I'm not sure that selling is as formulaic as people have traditionally been taught, which is, features, benefit. You got to facilitate rather than sell in today's world. It's stepping into that process of, and it's not the discovery question stuff that we're talking about. It's having the courage to have them say, yeah, well, no, I don't think that's the future at all. I disagree with you on that. Okay, let's walk through that. And one of us is going to be disrupted, but that's also okay, because now we're having a real conversation. I know we're on time, right on the past time, Marcus. So I'm hoping that the conversation has been useful, but I'm going to hand back to you, Marcus.
Please. Well, look.
Sorry, can I just make a comment? So you didn't mention it, but I presume you do in that model. I guess the other important part of that is, as you go through that line, is you're pointing out the risks and the downsides, so that they're getting a balanced view. Most vendors come in with a sort of perfect view, and people know intuitively, particularly with enterprise software, things don't go according to plan. Wheels do come off, and what they like to know is, so what do you do when the wheels fall off? And sort of take them through that plan as well.
I interviewed a very experienced 45-year CFO. He's Parisian and Jewish, so he does not brook any bullshit. What is fascinating is he made the point that what he wants to do is he wants to make a good decision well, and he doesn't want to make a bad decision. And if things go wrong, he wants to know that if he makes that decision, you have his back. That is what matters most. And if your model, if you're showing up, if your intent is not all about creating the conditions for that to be possible, you are failing your customers and yourself. Simple as.
They want to be made safe.
Absolutely.
It's what Patrick said. The recovery, how do we recover it if it doesn't go to plan? They want to be made safe. They want to know how to do that, and they want to win, at the end of the day. And it's a different style of selling. It's a more courageous style of selling where we've got to be willing to facilitate real conversations with people and, take real genius to the marketplace. Too many people are trying to dress up a solution that is the same as everybody else, and they're looking for the USP on something that just isn't that special, like do the work would be my response.
All the work needs to be done up front.
I think a lovely expression, Marcus has heard this, I don't know if you have, Simon, and I don't know who came up with the expression. I heard it from Anthony Iannarino originally, and he doesn't know where it came from. It was, they need to trust you to help them make a decision that they don't trust themselves to make.
Yeah. That's so great. I love that. That sounds like Anthony. Sounds like Anthony, but at least he admitted.
But no, he didn't. But he didn't actually coin it. But he, he admitted it.
Guys, we need to wrap up. Please make use of this. When the recording goes up, please share it, and make sure that there is a link to thesellercode.org, because we are trying to enlist people into becoming ethical sellers. If you're feeling brave, add thesellercode.org to your email signature. And if you're feeling really brave, add the line, I am proud to sell with the seller code. That's it. Because that then puts you into a position where your buyers will hold you to account to behave that way. This is how I want to show up. This is the human being I want to be in role. Ultimately, where I would like to take this is that we create a seller score that is made up of buyer safety and seller effectiveness. And that then follows salespeople around throughout their career, because their buyers will be the reference. Now, that I think is going to be really interesting, because we should be elevating this profession to the noble status that it should be at, instead of the pariah status that it's earned because of our intent. And start with the right intent, which is that we exist to serve the customer. That is our reason for being, nothing else. If we forget that, and we focus on trying to make our valuation target or our commission or pay for our kitchen, then our intent is skewed. We become highly self-orientated, and the buyer has no reason to buy. So to wrap up, please think of what you're going to do in the next 24 hours, 7 days and 14 days as a result of today's session to put this into practice. Once you have done those things, post them on the Seller Code platform page, and say what you're doing and ask for help. We are here to serve you, as you, I hope, will help us. Simon, how can people get hold of you?
Probably the best way is just to go to the website. If I can find the mouse on screen.
Modelsmethod.com.
Yeah, I'll just pop that in.
And if you are not subscribed to Simon's email list, get onto it. Regular, really good content, frequent 20-minute learning sessions based around his models. If you do nothing else, invest in that time, because it's frankly fantastic. I've learned so much from Simon, and he is, I would say, one of the 3 freshest minds in sales on the planet today. So we've been exceptionally fortunate. I believe that this is a fundamental shift in the way we should sell. And I'm asking you to be part of that journey. You know, if you can contribute to this mission, then volunteer. Tell us how you think you can help. We don't have all the answers. We don't have virtually any of the answers. We're struggling just like you. So, any final thoughts, questions?
Just to say thank you. Great session.